Good. Honored committee, dear friends, thank you all for coming here today to the final presentation of our doctoral study entitled Research into an HR Assessment Method based on the Human Energy Profile. So, for the next approximately 40 minutes, I will present to you the different parts and chapters of the doctoral study, ending with the original contributions as well as the final conclusions. So the general objective of this doctoral study is to examine the possibility of making an HR assessment method based on the human energy profile. And for this we have 4 sub-objectives: to conduct a bibliographical research based on the contemporary scientific studies within human resource management in order to investigate if human resources are something important for the company. The second specific objective is to examine the scientific studies that have already been conducted regarding the human energy profile. The third objective is to make a series of empirical studies in order to examine the possible link between the human energy profile and professional performance. And in the end, the final objective is to propose an HR assessment method based on the human energy profile. So, since we're dealing with human resources, of course it's important to examine if they are important for the company. Are the employees important for a company? Or is any employee as good as any other employee? Well, based on contemporary scientists within the domain of human resource management, we can conclude that human resources are important for the strategic success of a company, and not just any employee, but high-performing employees. Then we analyzed the HR architecture of the company, and we concluded that some employees, for example the knowledge employees, based on their strategic value and their uniqueness, are more important than other categories, like for example the job-based employees, which then again are more important than the contract workers. And thus the company should treat different categories of employees in different ways according to their importance for the strategic success of the company. According to Boxall and Purcell, there are 4 pillars in any company: marketing, production, funding, and human resources. They write that without any of these pillars, any company will collapse. Then we analyzed what is the goal of human resource management. And actually there are several goals. For example, there's an economic goal, which is to balance cost-effective labor with organizational flexibility. And then there's a social political goal, which is to balance social legitimacy with managerial power. And then the final goal of human resource management becomes to balance the economic goal with the social political goal. This is of course a continuous process that will continue to exist for as long as the company is existing. Then we analyzed some of the practical, concrete elements of human resource management, like for example workforce planning, how the company should have the right people with the right skills, doing the right thing in the right place at the right time for the right costs. We also analyzed how to get these employees in the company, meaning the recruitment and selection, and we concluded that the recruitment and selection is very important for a company, and that hiring the wrong employee, and even worse, the wrong manager, can be an extremely expensive affair. Then we analyzed what the company should do with these employees, this talent, once it has been assimilated in the company, meaning talent management. We have here a performance potential matrix, and we can see that the company can evaluate its employees on a performance going from low to high, on potential the same from low to high, and then of course the top right quadrants, those employees who are the high performers with the high potential, are of course the most important for the company, and thus should be treated in a specific way. They're the future of this company. Then we analyzed certain HR models. Now these models are very important because they give a conceptual understanding of human resource management. One of these models is the Harvard model. Here we can see how situational factors and stakeholder interests influence the HR policy choices that the company can take. which again influences or leads to certain HR outcomes that has certain long-term consequences, which then go back and influence the situational factors, the stakeholder interests, as well as the HR policy choices. And in this way, we have a loop, or actually a spiral, that can be either going up or down. Then we came with the first original contribution. We made a conceptual model based on the elements we had analyzed so far. We can see here how in the beginning we have the workforce planning, how the company can conclude that its existing employees equal the required employees. In that case, it needs to do nothing. It can be that the existing employees are larger than the required employees for the future activity of the company, and thus it should dismiss certain employees. And it can also be that the company is expanding and the existing employees are less than the required employees, in which case the company needs to assimilate more employees, meaning it goes through the recruitment, the selection process, it will guide the employees, and then it will train them to do their job. Then they will do their job, and at a certain moment there will be an evaluation. Now the evaluation, of course, it can be negative, meaning that the employee will be dismissed. It can also be positive, or it can even be very positive, meaning that the employee will be promoted. Once again, there might be a training if the job role has changed, has improved, and again the employee will conduct his or her job until at a certain moment there will be another evaluation process, and then this will continue for as long as the employee is in the company. Now, our model made it very clear that there are certain risks regarding this evaluation. There are certain risks regarding the employee. For example, that the employee can be very strategic, can work hard and long hours in the period of the evaluation, and then slack the rest of the year. It can also be that the employee is not seeing the importance of the evaluation, considers that it's something that removes his or her focus and time from the job, and thus leading to a worse performance, and thus a bad evaluation, and thus the evaluation in itself will affect his or her career negatively. And our model also shows that there are certain risks related to the employer. For example, the employer can have a lack of knowledge on how to conduct a proper assessment, evaluation. It can also be that the employer is spending too much time on the assessment, the evaluation, and thus it is draining the company for resources. It can also be that the employer is spending too little time on the evaluation, and thus that the outcome is not correct. And it can be that the evaluator is too subjective in the assessment, and so on. This can lead to bad climate, it can lead to bad performance, and it can even lead to litigation against the employer if the employee feels that the evaluation has affected his or her career in a negative way. And thus this model shows the importance for the employer to have as objective and quantitative an assessment method as possible, which is what we are working on developing. Then we analyzed what is performance, and one definition is that it's a job seen in relation to how successful it is performed. And there are certain criteria for judging performance. It can be subjective, it can be objective. It can be quantitative, but it can also be qualitative. It can be based on input, how many hours the employee is present at the work every week, and it can be based on output, what he actually generates or she actually generates during those hours. So in the lifetime of human resource management, which is approximately the last 100 years as an academic discipline, certain performance predictors have been developed. And if we start from the bottom, one of them, very frequently used in companies today, if you apply for a job, is education. The length of education, do I have a bachelor, do I have a master's, and so on. And there are two huge studies, Hunter and Hunter in 1984, Rines et al. In 2004. Each of these studies included hundreds of thousands of participants that set out to examine the correlation between these performance predictors and professional performance. And both studies independently found a correlation between length of education and performance of 0.10. In other words, a very low performance predictor. The correlation between this performance predictor and professional performance is very low, not even statistically significant. And then if we move up, we have others, reference check, assessment center, and in the top we have cognitive ability. Hunter and Hunter found a correlation coefficient between that and professional performance of 0.53. Rines et al. Found it to be 0.51. In other words, at least one of the best that we have. Now, this list of performance predictors make it obvious that what we're examining, the possibility of making objective quantitative HR assessments based on the human energy profile, meaning stress and energy, is in no way included in the present array of HR performance predictors, and thus what we're providing is something new that can lead the company to make predictions in areas which are at the present moment, let's say, in the dark. Then we take a step to something completely different. I'm sure you know Einstein, you know his famous equation, E equals mc squared. In other words, that energy equals mass multiplied with the speed of light uplifted in second. Now, one interpretation of this is that then everything in the universe consists of energy. So if that's true, then it must be true for the building you're in right now. It must consist of energy. It must be true for the chair you're sitting on. It must be true for your physical body, for your feelings, even for your thoughts. Everything consists of energy, just at different levels of vibration. According to physics, there are 4 forces that govern this energy: gravity, the strong and the weak nuclear attraction, and electromagnetism. And in his book, The Grand Design, Stephen Hawking writes that electromagnetic forces are responsible for all of chemistry and biology. Now, I assume that we can agree that we humans, we're biological beings. We also know that we have a chemical structure. If you eat or drink something, it has certain effects. If you don't eat or drink something, it'll have different effects. And if electromagnetism is the foundation of this, then it should be possible, assuming we have sufficiently advanced measuring equipment, to measure the electromagnetic field of a person and then make objective and quantitative assessments exactly like we can make on your mobile phone. You can see how much battery is left. Now, very important is, of course, can we expect to find any correlation between the electromagnetic field of the human being and that person's professional performance? According to Professor Emeritus Dr. William A. Tiller from Stanford University, the present view within medicine and biology is that a person can perform a function. Like you can bend your arm or you can think logically. That influences and is influenced by your structure. You can bend the arm because you have the elbow. You can think logically because you have the frontal cortex. And again, that influences and is influenced by the chemical level, and that is it. Now, Tiller says that this is completely correct. However, it is not the full picture. Because beyond the chemical level, you have the electromagnetic field, he says, and thus he's creating a correlation between the functioning of a human being, for example, professional performance, and that person's electromagnetic field, what we classify as the human energy profile. Now, one very important aspect for us is, of course, how to assess the human energy profile. And of course, we have analyzed many different tools for doing so. The functional magnetic resonance imaging used in medicine and neuroscience, the SQUID superconductive quantum interference device, the bioresonance, the Egerly device. Now, all of these devices seem to offer valid predictions. However, in the end, we chose the electrophotonic imaging device developed by Professor Dr. Korotkov, because this device, besides offering valid scientific predictions, it is also very portable. So it's, unlike some of the other devices, so it's enabled us to bring the device to the company and do on-the-job assessments, which enabled us to do a long series of studies which otherwise we wouldn't be able to do. So this device, it functions by measuring the photons that the test subject is emitting. So if you see the diagram to the right, the test subject, the finger of the test subject is placed on a diode, which is number 2, which is inside the device. Then number 5, electric generator generates a very weak electric current, you don't even notice it, that leads the test subject to emit a cloud of photons, number 3, which go through the diode, number 4, and which are then recorded by number 6, processed, number 7 and 8, and then made into a visible result, number 9. And here we can see in the middle we have the white area, which is the finger of the person, and then the blue area around is this cloud of photons that has been measured. And what scientists discovered is that different areas of different fingers corresponds to the functioning of different organs and systems in the human being. Now this is predominantly a device used within medical studies. I estimate it's around 80-90% that's within that. Around 10% is used in predicting athletic performance, and then there are also a series of studies done in other domains like we're doing in human resource management. Now this device provides around 1,400 different results in one scan that lasts less than a minute. What we have used is the energy scan analysis, where you can see we have emotional pressure. Previously this was known as stress. They updated the notion as they updated the last software version, and energy. And you can see regarding emotional pressure, we have a scale going from 0 to 10, 0 to 2 being calm, 2 to 3 being optimal, 3 to 4 being anxiety, 4 to 6 being stress, and then higher and higher levels of stress. And then in this situation, in this case, the blue line on top indicates how much the assessment of this person has been in this scan, meaning 2.30. And also we have the energy. We can see that we have a scale going from 0 to 100. You have to read it from the middle. From 40 to 70 is optimal, from 20 to 40 is lower, from 0 to 20 is low in comparison with optimal, from 70 to 90 is heightened, and from 90 to 100 is high. And then we can see that in this scan, the person has an assessment of 99.33, which is very high. Then moving on to the empirical studies, the second part of the doctoral study. As of now, we have published 10 scientific articles in peer-reviewed scientific journals with the empirical studies we have conducted in the course of this doctoral study. And we have divided them into 3 categories. So performance prediction. Now this is of course the most important, because this is the essence, this is where we examine if and in case so which relation there is between, as I just showed you, the stress and the energy and professional performance. Then we did a study, we have a category called work improvement, where we analyze how we can structure the workday in a way so it's leading to higher level of energy and or lower levels of stress, and thus indirectly higher performance. And the third category, employee well-being and development. Here we investigated which activities people can do, let's say people who have more ambition than energy, in order to increase their energy and or diminish their stress, and thus indirectly increase their performance. So the first study we did was with a large international company. What we wanted to examine was the correlation between the human energy profile and individual performance. So we went in this company and we assessed a total of 64 of their employees, the stress and the energy. And then we received, in an anonymous way, of course, from the company, the performance rating they do twice every year for their employees. They have a very structured performance evaluation process, and in the end they give each employee a note going from A, excellent performer, B, capable performer, C, satisfactory performer, and D, unsatisfactory performer. And then we correlated the findings, the stress and the energy, with this performance evaluation, meaning the note. What we found was, if we look in the top, the blue circle, we have energy, and in the right side we have the individuation. What we found was a correlation of 0.377 between the energy level and the individuation, meaning the notes the employee had received by the company. So this is a very strong statistically significant correlation. Regarding stress, the blue circle down, we found a correlation between stress and the end evaluation, even stronger than regarding energy and the end evaluation, this time just negative. So we found a correlation coefficient of minus 0.396. In other words, a strong statistically significant correlation, just that it is negative, meaning the lower level of stress, the higher we found the end evaluation to be. Regarding energy, it was positive. The higher level of energy, the higher the end evaluation score was. We did another study. We wanted to examine as many different areas as possible. So we also investigated if it was possible to predict company performance based on the human energy profile. So we went to a company and we evaluated a number of employees. We came in the beginning of 2016 and we assessed the accumulative stress and energy for all the employees in that branch of the company, in the country where we are. And we said, okay, we take this to be representative for the stress and energy you had for the last financial year. Then we came back exactly 1 year later, the same day of the week, Thursday, the same time interval, 10 to 12, and we assessed the stress and energy accumulative again for all the employees. And then we correlated this with the performance data of the company, meaning number of shipments, turnover, and profits. So what we found was that energy had increased with almost 40%. In the same time, turnover had improved with less than 1%, meaning basically no change. Number of transports, which is what they do, it's a logistics company, had gone up with almost 10%, and the profit had gone up with almost 20%. So in other words, it seems that in this study, for every 4% energy is increasing, number of transports is increasing with 1%, and for every 2% energy is increasing, profit has increased with 1%. Regarding stress, we found that stress has diminished with almost 20%. Of course, the number of transports, the financial data is the same. It's the same year we're looking at. Thus, it seems that for every 2% stress is diminishing, number of transports increase with 1%. And for every 1% stress diminished, profit has gone up with 1%. In other words, the findings in this study are exactly the same as the findings in study number 1, that a high level of energy equals high performance and low level of stress equals high performance. We did yet another study regarding individual performance. And this time we did the study over a year and a half. So we went in a logistics company and we assessed the employees in the branch in the country where we are once a month, actually the second Tuesday of the month between 10 and 12, and we did so for a year and a half. And then on a monthly basis, we received the number of shipments, the turnover, and the profit that each employee had generated. We received this from the company, and then we looked at the correlation between these numbers. So what we found was, regarding energy and turnover, we found a coefficient correlation of 0.358. Regarding energy and transports, we found a coefficient correlation of 0.319. In other words, strong statistically significant correlations. Regarding stress, we found a correlation of 0.242 between stress and turnover and 0.247 between stress and transports. In other words, a statistically strong correlation. Neither between energy nor stress did we find any statistically significant correlation with profit. So our conclusions in this study is that, again, we have found energy to be a performance predictor of pretty much the same coefficient correlation as in the first study. This study differs from all other studies we have done in the fact that we have found a positive correlation between stress and professional performance, meaning the more stressed the employees are, the higher performance. It makes sense from a certain point of view because working should generate certain results, and in the same way it probably also stresses people a bit, but the finding is completely different from what we have found in other studies, and thus it obviously shows that we need to make further scientific studies in order to have a full understanding of the correlation between the human energy profile, at least between stress and performance. All our findings regarding energy have been consistent. We did yet another study. We went to a professor at a university and presented to a group of his students this scientific study we're doing, and we asked them if we could measure them before an exam and then correlate the outcome at that exam, meaning the note they had obtained, with the energy profile. And a group of them agreed. We did so, and what we found was that we were able to predict with an accuracy of 71.42% the grade, the mark they obtained at the exam based on their human energy profile. So in this study, we used more than just stress and energy. We actually included a total of 12 different elements that we obtained from the electrophotonic imaging device. Good. Since this is the most important category of our studies, we've placed here our findings in the list of performance predictors that we showed you earlier. So if you look in the top area, we have energy written with red. In the first study, we found a coefficient correlation of 0.377. In the third study, we found it of 0.358. In other words, these are not the best performance predictors, but they're definitely not the worst either. So, regarding stress, in the first study, we found the negative correlation of minus 0.396. In other words, the strongest correlation we have found so far, just that it's negative, meaning low level of stress equals high performance. And in the third study, we found the positive correlation between stress and performance of 0.247. As I said, this is a surprising finding, and it shows that we need to conduct further studies. However, all our results regarding the correlation between energy and performance have been consistent. Then moving on to the second category of studies we have done, work improvement. So we wanted to do a study in order to examine how stress and energy changes for an employee during the workday. We went to another shipping company and we assessed a group of their employees 5 times during a workday. So at 9 o'clock in the morning before starting working, and then every 2 hours, so at 11, at 1, at 3, and then again at 5 o'clock just before they go home. What we found was that in the first measurement, the red line at 9 o'clock in the morning, 31.75% of the employees were more stressed than the rest of the day. And then generally speaking, their stress level falls. Regarding energy, we found that the first measurement, the brown line, the 9 o'clock, all but one had the lowest level of energy. Regarding the second measurement, the 11 o'clock, the blue line, we found that all but 2 had the second lowest level of energy there. And then the rest of the day, they actually had a very high level of energy. Thus, knowing that, as we have found in the previous studies, there's a correlation between high level of energy and high performance, the company would be able to improve performance for its employees possibly by restructuring the day so the employees could start working later in the day, assuming that the 6 o'clock or the 7 o'clock measurement would indicate a higher level of energy than the 9 o'clock measurement. As we hypothesize that a low level of stress also leads to high performance, it would also make sense regarding stress to, for example, introduce flex time. We did a follow-up on this study. Here we went to another company, once again a logistics company, and we did the same study. So we assessed the stress and energy of all the employees in the company 5 times per day, so every 2 hours, exactly again at 9 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. However, we did so for an entire work week. Our objective was to examine if there are any correlation between some days and others. So what we found was that day number 3, meaning Wednesday, follows day number 2, Tuesday. Regarding stress, what we found regarding energy was that once again, Wednesday follows Tuesday and Friday follows Thursday. So it seems that there are certain days that are better for the company, at least for the employees in this company, in this study, for doing activities aiming at increasing energy and or diminishing stress. And thus any company like what is happening in the West, especially in the United States and in Scandinavia, companies paying their employees to do sport during the workday, can have a higher return on investment doing it some days than other days. We did a study with a very interesting Danish company. They are the world leader in ground units to planes, and they have a very special HR practice. So every day at 11 o'clock, they stop all activity in the company. They go outside. Most of them go running, some go for a walk, some go and play football together, and others even go and sail kayak on the ocean. They do this half an hour, then they come back, they take a shower, they eat a healthy meal, and they continue working. So they started in 2009, and every year since, starting in 2011, every year has been a new peak regarding turnover and profits. So what we did was we went and looked internally in the company on the stress and energy during the day. And the company has two segments of employees, the production workers and the office workers. And what we discovered was that the office workers, they decrease their stress significantly more than do the production workers. And we also found that the office workers increase their energy more than the production workers do. So it seems that, at least our findings in this study, that the office workers benefit more from this HR practice than the production workers, and thus it could be that the production workers, instead of going out, if they feel like it, at least could have the possibility of going and relaxing or resting, maybe even sleeping half an hour, and this would lead to an increase in their energy and possibly a diminishing in their stress. Then the last category we have examined, so the employee well-being and development. Here we examine how different activities can influence the human energy profile, meaning stress and energy, both in a good and in a bad way. So the first study we did was regarding the effects of electronic devices, meaning a mobile phone. Here we did an initial measurement, then we used a phone for surfing, going online, checking the weather and so on for 15 minutes. Then we did a second scan, then we used the phone for talking for 15 minutes, and then we did the third scan. And as we can see, using the phone for surfing, it basically doubled the stress level of the person, while it diminished the energy with around 15%. Talking on the phone increased the energy with insignificant 5%, while it diminished the stress level a little bit. The following day, we did a follow-up on this study. So we did an initial measurement again. Then we kept the phone in the pocket for 10 minutes, did the second measurement, and then we took out the phone every minute for 10 minutes, pressed the home button, saw what time it was, and then put it back in the phone, and continued doing so in total 10 times in 10 minutes. And then we did the third scan. So what we found was that having the phone in the pocket actually diminished stress, did nothing to the energy, but using it to check the time for those 10 minutes, it basically again doubled the stress and diminished the energy with around 15%. So we're not saying not to use electronic devices, just that it seems that they have an effect on the stress and energy level, and thus indirectly on performance. Then we did a study. We wanted to examine how Aikido is possibly influencing the stress and energy levels of people. We went to an Aikido dojo, and we, over a period of approximately half a year, assessed 22 practitioners, some more than once. In the end, we had 96 measurements, 48 before practice and 48 after. So what we found was that regarding energy, 83.30% of the practitioners had increased their energy level as a result of the practice. And we found, regarding stress, that 87.50% of the practitioners had diminished the stress level. In other words, it seems that Aikido can be a practical method for people who wish to increase their energy and or diminish their stress, and thus indirectly improve their performance. The final study we did was regarding mindfulness. So as you probably know, mindfulness is being used more and more in the West, especially in the United States, in Scandinavia, as a practical tool for stress reduction. And what we wanted to do was to examine the results of the practice of mindfulness. So we went to a mindfulness seminar. We measured a total of 106 participants in the before and after practice. So this seminar was 6 days, and as you can see, very surprisingly, the first 5 days people were actually more stressed after practicing than they were before. Then on the 6th day it changes, so suddenly the practice of mindfulness had diminished their stress. Now, it might be a surprising finding. It seems to indicate that mindfulness is a practical method to diminish stress. However, a certain practice is required before the positive results appear. Regarding energy, we found basically the same as regarding the stress. At least the first 5 days, we found that people had less energy after practicing than before. Then on the 6th day, it was the same before-after measurements. However, your guess is as good as mine if you look at the graph going from day number 5 to day number 6 regarding how would the outcome have been if we had measured, or if the workshop had lasted 7 days. So our conclusions are that it seems that mindfulness is a way to increase energy, possibly to increase energy. We found that it can diminish stress, just that a certain practice is required before the positive results start appearing. Then moving on to the fourth objective of our study, to make an HR assessment method based on the human energy profile. Of course, there are certain preliminary considerations a company should do. It should decide, should it be in-house, meaning to train a specialist in the electrophotonic imaging device, to buy the device, to license the software and so on, or simply to outsource it. There are also certain elements regarding the frequency of the measurement. So we suggest that very stressful job roles, like for example, nuclear power plant controller, airport controller, pilots, are tested on a daily basis simply because of the importance of their work, that everything works perfectly. We suggest that normally stressful jobs like managers, lawyers, police officers, and so on, medics, are tested on a monthly basis because this gives an overview of their development, so you can interfere in time if they start becoming too stressed or they're starting to burn out, and that all other job roles are tested once every 1 to 3 months. And there are certain pre-measurement clarifications, like why does a specific employee or manager need to be measured? And of course, it can be general well-being, it can be a recruitment and selection situation, it can also be regarding promotion. Now, mostly we promote people because of their past successful performance. And in some cases, that past performance has been too much for them to sustain over a long period of time. And by promoting them, it can lead them to go down with stress or to burn out, simply from the extra work they will get, from the larger responsibility and so on. So in case of promotion, by doing this assessment, you can see, yeah, this person is too stressed. It's not a good idea to promote him or her. It'll be much better to give a stress reduction program, and then in time, when he or she is ready, promote that person. There are also certain elements for the measurements, like Korotkov is describing in one of his scientific articles the specific elements. You need to have a waiting room where a person can wait 10 to 15 minutes, perhaps enjoy a glass of water. You need to have a quiet, well-aired room for the assessments. The device has to be placed in a comfortable height on a table. It stands in a stable way. Of course, it has to be calibrated. The fingers have to be tested one by one. And if the person is pressing too much or too little with one finger, the scan has to be redone. And in the end, the data is sent and the result come back immediately. Now, of course, the very most important thing, the very first thing that should be done when you get the result is to show it to the employee. Because the employee might be stressed, might be worried about what are the results, it's fair and correct to show the results immediately. And in this case, you can also discuss if there are any abnormal occurrences. If the employee had a very tough project that just finalized yesterday, he or she might be more drained of energy or with a higher level of stress, and the scan might not be representative. On the other side, if he or she has just been in vacation or spent the weekend in the mountains or at the seaside, it might be that the result is very, very good, however, not particularly representative. So these things need to be discussed afterwards, and of course, the results needs to be written in the file of the employee, so the employee can, so you can keep track of the development, and of course also shown to the right people in the management, the supervisor, the HR director, and so on. So if needed, an action plan can be made and followed up on. Our calculation regarding to keep it in-house or to hire a consulting company, that if it is more than 1,000 assessments per month, then it pays off for the company to have it in-house. If not, to use a consulting agency. Good. So here we have a few of the most important original contributions that we have provided in the course of this doctoral study. So original contribution number 4, we've shown that the present array of HR performance predictors do not include the energy level of the employee. In other words, what we're providing is something completely new. Original contribution number 7, we've shown that there have been found a connection between individual performance and the human energy profile. In all our studies, we have found this connection, the correlation, high level of energy equals high performance. Original contribution number 10, we have shown that the workday can be arranged in such a way that it's leading to a higher level of energy and or lower level of stress, and thus indirectly higher performance. And we have shown that in original contribution number 12, that certain external factors influence the stress and the energy level of the human being. It can be in a positive way, it can be in a negative way, and thus people wishing to have even more success in life can do the things that increase their energy level, diminish their stress, and thus increase their performance. And finally, original contribution number 15, we've provided an HR assessment method based on the human energy profile. So our conclusions. We have concluded that the employees are very important for the success of any company. Not just any employees, but the high-performing employees, and thus does any company that has a better way than other companies in predicting high-performing employees have a strategic advantage over other companies. Because of this, certain performance predictors have been developed in the lifespan of human resource management. All our studies have consistently found a positive, statistically significant correlation between energy and performance. We have also in all studies found a connection between stress and performance. However, as we said in study number 3, it was a positive correlation. Thus, it seems that the human energy profile is a way of predicting future performance. The results are very clear regarding energy. The results need to be elaborated further before we have a full understanding of the connection between stress and performance. And furthermore, that this HR assessment method seems to provide certain results that are not included in the present array of HR performance predictors. In the end, further direction of this sub field of human resource management, of course, we suggest larger empirical studies with longer duration and with more participants. Also, we suggest correlating stress and or energy with other performance predictors. It makes sense to consider that a person with a high IQ and a high level of energy is more performant than a person with a high IQ but a low level of energy. And thus combining these predictors in the correct way can improve the predictability of high performers. We also suggest examining the possibility to predict teamwork, which people can work together, which people will be good in the same department, who should be a manager, and so on. Because other scientists, for example, Professor Emeritus Dr. Valerie V. Hunt from UCLA, have done studies with the electromagnetic field of the person and has concluded that she could make certain predictions regarding the interaction of people. And we think that this can be used, once studied further, in making these kind of predictions in the companies. And in the end, we suggest developing a specific human energy profile HR software that provides the data needed in HR departments in the way that is useful, approachable for HR specialists. For example, to have an overview of the stress and energy development of a person, and once we finish examining the interaction of people based on their human energy profile, it will also be nice with a button you can press, and that will give a list of suggestions to whom to put together in teams and so on. So in the end, I want to thank you very much for your time and attention. It has been a great honor to do this study, and we're very grateful to all the people, all the companies, all the professors that has helped us in this study. Thank you very much.